The heavy mahogany door clicked shut behind Erica, cutting off the ambient noise of the hotel corridor. She stepped onto the polished obsidian floors of the penthouse suite, her hands tightly gripping a fresh stack of linens. She immediately realized she had made a fatal error. The room was bathed in amber light, reflecting off massive floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over the cold blue neon of the city skyline. In the center of the room stood Kang Joon-ha, the undisputed boss of the syndicate. His tailored black suit perfectly framed his broad shoulders, and dark, ornamental floral tattoos crept menacingly up his sharp jawline. Within a heartbeat, the atmosphere turned lethal. 5 clean-cut bodyguards in matching black suits whipped out their handguns, the cold metallic barrels pointing directly at Erica's chest. She froze, her large dark eyes wide with terror, her breath catching in her throat. Joon-ha raised a single hand, halting his men. He stepped forward with predatory elegance, his gold wristwatch catching the light. His intense gaze locked onto her chest, not with aggression, but with sudden, shocking recognition. His fingers reached out, gently lifting the silver heart-shaped pendant resting against her white collar. The entire room held its breath. The silver heart pendant felt heavy between Kang Joon-ha's long, calloused fingers. His intense gaze remained locked on the shining metal, completely ignoring the 5 armed bodyguards who stood frozen around them. Erica could hear the rapid thumping of her own heart against her ribs, her breath catching as the cold barrels of the guns stayed pointed directly at her chest. The silence in the luxury penthouse was thick and suffocating, broken only by the faint hum of the city lights shimmering through the massive glass walls. "Boss," the head bodyguard finally whispered, his knuckles whitening on the grip of his automatic pistol. "Should we remove her?" Joon-ha did not look up. His thumb slowly traced the smooth edge of the silver heart, his face an unreadable mask of stone. "Lower your weapons," he commanded. His voice was a low, quiet growl that vibrated through the room, carrying a terrifying weight that demanded instant obedience. "Put them away. Now." The bodyguards hesitated for a fraction of a second before quickly holstering their firearms. The sudden click of metal relaxation rippled through the warmly lit suite. Erica slowly let out a trembling breath, her large, dark eyes tracking Joon-ha's every move. She made sure her shoulders shook slightly beneath her ruffled white apron, playing the part of a terrified Maid perfectly, though her mind was spinning with sharp, icy calculations. Joon-ha finally let go of the necklace, stepping closer until he stood directly over her. He was tall, his broad shoulders blocking out the view of the modern skyline behind him. The dark floral tattoos on his neck seemed to shift under the warm amber lights. "You do not belong on this restricted floor," he said softly, his dark eyes searching her face intently. "Where did you get this necklace?" "It was my father's, sir," Erica whispered, her voice cracking with a carefully practiced wave of fear. "I am just a temporary waitress. I took the wrong service elevator. Please just let me go back downstairs." A cold, dangerous smile touched the corners of Joon-ha's lips. "You are not going anywhere, Erica." Hearing her name fall from his lips sent a genuine shiver down her spine. He turned away from her, walking toward a sleek black security console mounted on the marble wall. He pressed his palm against the glass screen, a bright green light scanning his skin. "Seal the penthouse level. Complete biometric lockdown. No one enters or leaves without my personal clearance." With a heavy, mechanical thud, reinforced steel shutters slid across the private elevator doors, trapping them inside the towering fortress. Joon-ha turned back to look at her, his gold watch catching the ambient light. He had established total control over her world in a matter of seconds. Erica clutched her dress tightly, staring at the locked exit. To the Mafia boss, she was just a fragile bird trapped in a beautiful cage. But as she looked at his back, she knew her plan was working perfectly. Joon-ha gestured toward two of his serious bodyguards, his expression remaining completely unreadable. "Take her to the eastern suite," he ordered, his deep voice slicing through the quiet room. "Ensure she has everything she needs, but she does not leave that room." The guards stepped forward immediately, their large frames casting long shadows over Erica. She shrank back, letting her breath hitch as if paralyzed by fear. Her fingers clutched the fabric of her white apron so tightly her knuckles turned pale. As they let her down a long, dimly lit corridor lined with expensive mahogany panels, she kept her head low, her dark curls obscuring her face. To anyone watching, she was a helpless maid on the verge of tears. But beneath her submissive posture, Erica's eyes were wide open, cataloging every single detail of her new surroundings. They reached a massive double door at the end of the hall. One guard swiped a sleek black keycard, and the heavy door clicked open with a soft hiss of compressed air. Erica was gently nudged inside, and the door immediately locked shut behind her with a definitive sound. The Eastern Suite was a masterpiece of modern luxury, boasting plush silk carpets, minimalist furniture, and a vast floor-to-ceiling window showcasing the glowing city below. Yet, Erica did not care about the wealth. She saw it only as a gilded cage. Standing in the center of the vast space, she began to tremble on purpose, wiping a fake tear from her cheek just in case there were hidden cameras watching her movements. She walked slowly toward the bed, letting her footsteps drag like a terrified girl who had lost all hope. In reality, her mind was working with lightning speed, mapping the exact layout of the room. Her gaze swept across the ceiling, quickly locating the tiny, blinking lenses of 3 security cameras hidden within the subtle molding. She carefully calculated their angles, finding a narrow blind spot near the heavy walk-in closet. Next, she noted the thick glass of the windows, recognizing it as reinforced, bulletproof material that would be impossible to break without explosives. She timed the steady hum of the central ventilation system, checking the size of the ceiling vents to see if they could serve as an alternative escape route. Every exit, every lock, and every potential obstacle was cataloged and memorized. Her father had trained her to analyze a secure environment within minutes, and she would not let his lessons go to waste. She sat down softly on the edge of the mattress, resting her chin in her hands while maintaining her frightened expression. She knew Joon-ha was likely watching her from a screen somewhere, trying to figure out her secrets. He completely believed he held all the power inside this massive fortress. But the dangerous Mafia boss had actually just allowed his greatest threat to walk straight into his inner sanctum, and she was entirely ready for him. The heavy double doors of the Eastern Suite slid open with a quiet mechanical click, breaking the eerie silence that had settled over the room. Erica did not look up immediately, keeping her gaze fixed on her lap as she sat on the edge of the large bed. Heavy, measured footsteps echoed softly across the polished floor, stopping right in front of her. She raised her large, dark eyes to find Kang Joon-ha looking down at her, his tailored black suit jacket now unbuttoned, revealing the dark, intricate floral tattoos that crawled along his neck. In his hand, he held the silver heart-shaped necklace. "Do you really have no idea what this is, Erica?" Joon-ha asked, his deep baritone voice surprisingly calm, but filled with an intense gravity. He sat down on a sleek velvet chair opposite her, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees, dangling the silver pendant between his long fingers. Erica shook her head slowly, letting a fresh tear escape and roll down her cheek. "It is just a family heirloom," she whispered, her voice trembling perfectly. "My father gave it to me before he died 10 years ago. He told me to always keep it close to my heart. He was just a quiet, ordinary accountant." Joon-ha let out a low, dark chuckle that sent a shiver through the quiet room. "Your father was many things, but He was never ordinary. His name was Marcus Anderson, and to the rest of the world, he did not exist. Within my syndicate, he was known as the Ghost Architect. He leaned closer, the golden light catching the sharp angles of his jaw. He was the brilliant mastermind who built our entire underground banking system. He created an encrypted, multi-billion-dollar network that keeps our money completely invisible from the law and our enemies. Erica gasped, pressing her hands against her mouth, doing her best to look entirely overwhelmed by the shocking revelation. "No, that is impossible," she sobbed. "We lived a simple life. He worked in a small office." "It was a front to protect you," Joon-ha countered, his eyes locked onto her face. 10 years ago, a rogue faction led by my underboss, Han-wol, tried to steal his secrets. Your family paid the price. But Han-wol never found the master key because your father hid it right here. He held up the silver heart-shaped pendant. "This is not just silver jewelry. It contains a hidden biometric chip. It is the final key to the entire empire and the main reason you are currently the most hunted person in this city. You must stay here," Joon-ha added, his possessive tone returning as he placed the necklace back into her trembling hands. "As long as you are inside this secure fortress, I will personally keep you safe from the terrifying darkness that took your father." Erica clutched the cold metal tightly, nodding weakly like a frightened girl, while her inner hunter secretly rejoiced. The days that followed brought a different kind of storm to New York City, one that did not fall from the sky, but bled through the neon-lit streets below. From her high-altitude sanctuary, Erica watched the flashing red and blue lights of emergency vehicles cutting through the dark night like distant fireflies. Even through the heavy, soundproof glass of the luxurious penthouse, the faint, rhythmic wailing of sirens seemed to echo constantly. Inside the fortress, the atmosphere had grown incredibly tight and heavy. The bodyguards no longer stood like still statues. They moved with a sharp, nervous energy, their earpieces buzzing with frantic, hushed updates. Han-wol had finally made his move, launching a series of brutal, coordinated attacks across the city to cripple Joon-ha's vast criminal empire. Erica sat quietly in the main living area, a silver tray of untouched tea resting on the marble table before her. She kept her head down, her dark curls shadowing her face as she pretended to flinch at every sudden movement of the guards. In reality, she was listening intently to every word whispered in the hallways. Han-wol's rogue faction had just torched 2 major shipping warehouses in Queens and intercepted a valuable armored transport near the harbor. The massive financial damage to their operations was incredibly severe, but the direct threat to Joon-ha's absolute authority over the city was even worse. The rival faction was slowly drawing a violent, suffocating circle around the entire syndicate, trying to starve them out and force the Grand Mafia boss into making a fatal mistake that would destroy his empire. The heavy mahogany doors swung open, and Joon-ha strode into the room, surrounded by a cloud of thick tension. His tailored black suit jacket was gone, his white dress shirt sleeves rolled up to reveal his strong forearms and the dark floral tattoos creeping up his neck. His jaw was set in a hard line, his intense eyes burning with an icy fury. He paused when he saw Erica, his fierce expression instantly softening into that familiar, possessive gaze. He walked over and stood near her, his gold watch glinting under the amber lights. "Han-wol is getting desperate," Joon-ha said, his deep baritone voice tight with controlled anger as he looked out at the burning city skyline. "He is striking my businesses to create chaos, trying to smoke us out. He wants the master key, and he thinks he can frighten me into giving you up." He reached down, his large hand gently resting on her shoulder, a protective gesture that felt like an iron weight. "But he does not know who he is dealing with. I will burn this entire city to the ground before I let them touch a single hair on your head, Erica. Erica looked up at him, her large dark eyes swimming with a perfectly manufactured terror. She nodded weakly, shrinking slightly into his touch, while her mind quietly celebrated the beautiful, violent chaos she had set in motion. The tense quiet inside the luxury penthouse did not last long. Late into the evening, a sudden, deep rumble shook the massive glass windows. Far away across the dark river, a brilliant orange fireball erupted into the night sky, illuminating the distant shipping docks in a horrific, burning glow. Seconds later, the muffled sound of a massive explosion rolled across the city, vibrating through the marble floor beneath Erica's feet. Within the apartment, security alarms beeped in sharp, panicked patterns. The remaining bodyguards immediately drew their weapons, moving into a protective circle around the room as their earpieces erupted with frantic shouts from the lower levels. The heavy mahogany doors slammed open, and Joon-ha rushed into the room, his top captain, Min-jae, right at his heels. Min-jae was pale, his voice shaking as he delivered the urgent news. "Boss, it is the main harbor. Hanwol's men just blew up our primary weapons shipment in Hangar 4. It is an absolute bloodbath down there. Our men are completely surrounded and pinned down. If we lose that cargo, the entire syndicate will see it as a sign of complete weakness." Joon-ha let out a terrifying growl, his large fist slamming down onto the sleek marble counter with enough force to crack the surface. His dark eyes burned with an icy, lethal fury as he stared at the distant fire. "Hanwol is trying to force my hand," he snarled, his deep voice vibrating with controlled rage. "He knows I cannot ignore a direct strike of this scale. Prepare the armored vehicles immediately. We are going down there to crush them ourselves." Min-jae hesitated, his eyes shifting nervously toward Erica. "But boss, taking the primary security detail leaves the penthouse vulnerable. It could be a trick." "The building is on a total biometric lockdown," Joon-ha countered sharply, his tone leaving absolutely no room for argument. "No one can get past the reinforced steel gates without my personal palm scan. I am leaving Captain Sang-hyun here with a small team to guard her. She will be perfectly safe." Joon-ha walked over to Erica, his long strides full of dominant purpose. He reached down, his large, calloused hands gently framing her face, forcing her large dark eyes to look up into his. His touch was warm but possessive, his thumb lightly tracing her jawline. "I must leave for a few hours to handle this threat, Erica," he murmured softly, his voice dropping into that deep, protective tone. "Stay in the Eastern Suite. Do not move. My men will protect you with their lives. I will return before the sun rises." Erica trembled on purpose, her hands gripping his sleeves like a terrified child. "Please be careful," she whispered weakly, letting her voice shake. Joon-ha nodded firmly, turned on his heel, and strode out of the penthouse, followed by his elite guards. As the heavy doors sealed behind them, the apartment fell into an eerie silence, and Erica's fake tears instantly vanished as she realized the real trap had just been sprung. The silence left behind by the departing Mafia convoy was heavy and suffocating. Erica stood near the large floor-to-ceiling windows, her fingers lightly touching the silver heart pendant around her neck. The amber interior lighting of the penthouse cast long, dancing shadows across the empty marble floor. Outside, the cold blue glow of the New York skyline felt millions of miles away. The vast, empty apartment felt entirely haunted by the dangerous legacy of her hidden family past. She listened closely, her sharp ears catching the sound of footsteps approaching from the hallway. They were not the hurried, protective steps of a loyal guard. These footsteps were slow, deliberate, and full of arrogant confidence. The heavy mahogany doors of the living room opened, and Captain Sang-hyun stepped inside. He had dismissed the other remaining guards, leaving only himself. He no longer looked like the respectful soldier who had stood at attention for Kang Joon-ha. A cruel, mocking smile stretched across his sharp face as his cold eyes locked onto Erica. He reached into his tailored black suit jacket and pulled out a sleek handgun, slowly twisting a long, black silencer onto the metallic barrel with a terrifyingly calm click. "So, the little maid is all alone," Sang-hyun said, his voice dropping into a harsh, mocking tone that filled the quiet room.
Joon-ha is truly a fool.
His pathetic obsession with you and your dead father has blinded him completely. He actually believed the harbor explosion was a real attack. He took his entire elite security team down to the docks, completely unaware that he was walking straight into a massive ambush. The harbor was just bait to get the great Mafia boss out of this fortified sky fortress. Erica shrank back against the sleek velvet sofa, her large dark eyes wide with a perfectly manufactured terror. She clutched her white Maid uniform apron with trembling fingers, letting her breath hitch painfully in her throat. "Captain Sang-hyun, what are you doing?" she whimpered, her voice cracking with fake panic. "You are supposed to protect me. Joon-ha will kill you if he finds out." Sang-hyun let out a low, humorless laugh, taking another step forward until his large frame blocked the ambient amber light. "Joon-ha won't be coming back alive from the docks. And even if he does, I will already be gone. Han-wol offered me $5 million and a massive territory in downtown Manhattan to open these biometric doors from the inside. I am securing my own retirement tonight." He pointed the cold barrel of the suppressed pistol directly at her forehead. "Hand over the silver heart necklace immediately, Erica. I know it is the biometric key to the entire multi-billion-dollar banking ledger. Give it to me right now, or I will start breaking those delicate, expensive fingers one by one until you do." Erica cowered deeply against the soft fabric of the cushions, weeping softly like a helpless, terrified victim facing her doom. Sang-hyun made his first fatal mistake by assuming that Erica's tears were real. He stepped closer, lowering the suppressed pistol slightly as his absolute arrogance peaked. He reached out a large, heavy hand to violently rip the silver heart necklace from her neck. But the very moment his fingers brushed against the metal, the trembling stopped completely. The tears vanished completely from Erica's face, and her wide, terrified eyes instantly turned into two pools of sharp, freezing ice. In a blur of terrifying motion, Erica didn't just move. She exploded upward with perfect, lethal precision. Her father had spent years preparing her for this exact night, forcing her to undergo rigorous physical conditioning in secret. Before Sang-hyun could even register the sudden change in her posture, Erica twisted her body violently to the left, easily dodging the cold barrel of his gun. Her left hand shot upward like a striking snake, driving the solid heel of her palm directly into the sensitive nerve cluster right beneath the captain's heavy jawline. The bone-rattling force of the strike sent a terrible shockwave through Sang-hyun's system. His vision flashed a blinding white, and his breath caught in his throat as his grip on her uniform completely released. He stumbled back, his balance entirely destroyed. Before the seasoned, dangerous Mafia captain could raise his weapon to fire, Erica's right hand moved toward the ruffled trim of her white Maid headband. With a sharp metallic snick, she drew a concealed, 8-inch titanium needle blade that had been woven invisibly into the fabric. She stepped forward with flawless spatial awareness, sweeping her arm in a fast, surgical arc. The razor-sharp edge of the hidden blade cleanly severed the vital flexor tendons in Sang-hyun's right wrist. A ragged, gurgling scream of intense agony tore from the traitor's throat as his fingers went completely numb. The cold, Suppressed pistol slipped from his useless hand, clattering loudly across the polished marble floor. Sang-hyun clutched his heavily bleeding wrist, staring at her in absolute shock and horror. He could not comprehend how a fragile, simple waitress had just completely dismantled him in less than 3 seconds. But Erica gave him absolutely no time to recover. She delivered a brutal, calculated kick directly to the side of his knee, forcing the joint to snap backward. Sang-hyun crashed heavily onto his back with a dull thud. Erica calmly stepped over his large frame, pressing the freezing tip of her titanium blade directly against his pulsing carotid artery. The ambient amber light of the penthouse reflected off her cold, unblinking eyes, showing absolutely no trace of the frightened girl she had pretended to be. She was no longer a helpless captive trapped in a gilded fortress. She was a perfectly armed weapon, radiating a terrifying authority that made the bleeding traitor freeze in pure, paralyzing terror. "You assumed my uniform meant weakness," she whispered, her voice slicing through the quiet room like winter ice. "That was your second fatal mistake." The heavy reinforced doors of the penthouse burst open with the sudden force of a violent gale. Kang Joon-ha stormed into the room, his tailored black dress shirt torn at the shoulder and heavily stained with fresh, crimson blood. His intense eyes scanned the dark amber suite, his automatic pistol raised and ready to eliminate any hidden threat. Min-jae and 3 heavily armed bodyguards flooded in right behind him, their boots skidding slightly on the polished, dark marble floor. They had successfully broken through Hanwol's ambush at the harbor and raced back through the chaotic city streets like madmen, terrified that the Sky Fortress had been entirely breached. Joon-ha froze instantly in the entryway, the frantic breath completely leaving his lungs. The shocking scene before him defied all possible logic. His supposedly fragile, terrified maid was standing flawlessly in the center of the room, her posture radiating a cold, lethal authority that completely commanded the vast space. At her feet, Captain Sang-hyun lay writhing in immense agony, clutching his severely bleeding wrist, while the sharp tip of an 8-inch titanium needle blade remained pressed firmly against his neck. "Erica," Joon-ha whispered, his deep baritone voice shaking slightly as he lowered his firearm just an inch. His calculating mind struggled to process the dangerous predator standing proudly in his living room. Erica did not turn her head, her large, dark eyes remaining fixed on the groveling traitor beneath her boot. "Sang-hyun sold you out to Hanwol for $5 million and territory downtown," she said, her voice turning completely to winter ice. "The harbor explosion was just a clever diversion to get you out of the building so he could steal my father's secret key." Min-jae stared at the bleeding captain, then looked at the calm waitress, his jaw practically dropping to the floor in utter disbelief. "Boss, she completely defeated him by herself," he stammered. Joon-ha's initial shock slowly melted away, transforming into something far more intense and dangerous. A dark, magnificent smirk slowly spread across his handsome face. The protective obsession he had held for a helpless girl morphed instantly into a profound, terrifying awe for the magnificent queen standing before him. He realized she had never been a victim. She was a brilliant master strategist who had planned her own arrival into his world. "Min-jae," Joon-ha ordered, his deep voice vibrating with an immense, lethal pride. "Take this pathetic piece of garbage down to the soundproof holding rooms in the basement. Keep him alive until he tells us exactly where Hanwol is hiding his remaining forces tonight. Then, dispose of him." "Yes, boss," Min-jae replied quickly, roughly dragging the weeping traitor out of the suite. As the heavy doors sealed shut once more, leaving Joon-ha and Erica alone in the warm amber light, the old dynamic of master and servant vanished forever. Joon-ha slowly walked toward her, his eyes burning with a deep, respectful fascination as he prepared to rule alongside his true equal. Erica stepped up to the primary security console, her slender fingers holding the silver heart-shaped pendant up to the bright digital scanner. With a soft chime, the complex biometric interface accepted her data, and her father's invisible banking network came to life across the glowing monitors. Millions of lines of glowing code illuminated the dim penthouse room, revealing every hidden transaction, shell company, and secret offshore account belonging to Han-Wool's rogue faction. Erica's dark eyes reflected the cascading data as she quickly traced the financial lifelines of their enemies. She did not just see numbers. She saw a blueprint for total destruction. By freezing Han-Wool's secret funding and locking his hidden digital vaults, she cut off the rival faction's ability to pay their mercenaries or buy weapons. She stripped away their armor before the physical battle even began, proving that knowledge was far more lethal than any bullet. Armed with Erica's perfect financial intelligence, Joon-ha unleashed his syndicate's immense tactical muscle upon the city with absolute precision. The systematic erasure of Han-Wool's remaining empire happened with terrifying speed over the next 48 hours. Joon-ha's heavily armed tactical teams struck several secret warehouses simultaneously, hitting the exact locations Erica had uncovered on her screens. Without money to fund their defenses, Han-Wool's scattered soldiers fell into complete panic, unable to coordinate any resistance. Joon-ha moved through the operations like a dark storm, his tailored black suit jacket discarded as he personally led the final charge against their enemy's strongest fortresses. Every single rogue safehouse was thoroughly dismantled, and every illegal operation was completely burned to the ground before midnight. The city's criminal underworld watched in absolute horror as the rival family was surgically erased from existence, leaving no trace behind. By the time the early morning sun began to peek over the modern skyline, Han-Wool himself was completely trapped, his entire empire turned to dust. Joon-ha returned to the luxury penthouse, his knuckles slightly bruised but his expression filled with deep satisfaction. He walked over to where Erica stood by the massive floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the quiet city below. He placed his large, calloused hand over hers, their fingers intertwining over the cold glass. Together, they had completely torn down the old criminal hierarchy, replacing it with a brilliant new architecture that unified her mind and his muscle. The vast, multi-billion-dollar empire was no longer just Joon-ha's inheritance. It was their shared domain, rebuilt on a foundation of absolute equality. They had successfully proven a powerful, undeniable truth to the entire criminal underworld. Real power is never truly defined by a person's outward status, wealth, or the simple uniform they wear to survive. The absolute most dangerous force in any room will always be the patient, quiet strategist who allows their arrogant enemies to completely underestimate them. Standing high above New York, the ruthless Mafia boss and his brilliant shadow queen smiled at the new dawn, ready to rule their unified kingdom together.